Hi everyone, welcome to this special show for Dark Matters, and we have Carly Spell, the mastermind behind Dark Matters, and we have the wonderful John O'Looney, who's on the front lines at the moment, really trying to bring the truth out there and expose some of the corruption that's going on at the moment. How are you both doing?
Ladies first.
Oh, thank you, John. They're still gentlemanly.
Well, it's
Yeah,
frightening
I'm
to
absolutely
assume now, isn't it? Anyone's
Yeah.
gender.
they, them, who, they. Well, I don't even know what. I mean, my real name's not Carly Spell. God knows who I am these days. Jill, obviously. But yeah, no, I'm good. I'm tired. I think we're all, it's well, we really like nearly 4 years into it now. So it's yeah, I've been a bit tired this week because I'm just so busy with the network. But it's yeah, I met John after I did a talk up in Burnley at the Truth Heroes with David Edelman and Richard Robes was hosting it. So he graciously agreed to come on the podcast, and it was, yeah, but you could hear a pin drop in the room when John was talking. But yes, I'm good, John. Thank you, and thank you for being here as well, John. Two Johns,
It's
John is
I'll be JC for the rest of this. I'll just call
okay,
myself
JC.
JC, so
Yeah,
we
that I
can
was
keep
gonna
it
say, so it's
simple.
gonna get a little confusing.
And yeah, Mr. O'Looney, sir, we did a show together. You very kindly came on, and as you said, you just want to get the truth out there. And I know you've been doing, you'll go on anyone's show basically just to try and get the truth out, right?
I will. I've spoke to people that are doing it from their bedroom, and they've got a following of a few dozen. I've spoke to people like Alex Jones and Robert Kennedy Jr. and Dr. John Campbell, who've got many millions following them. And the idea of that is I'm not at all interested in any sort of accolade or fame or anything like that. And I can't wait to get back to being me. I just want to save lives. And I know the more people I speak to, the more chance I've got of reaching someone else who's on the fence or is not quite sure or is just waking up. And the idea is to save their life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of people who I call them the moderates who we can still get through to. There's some people that you'll never get through to, but we can only do what we can do, right? And that's the whole point of doing these types of shows.
A hundred
Um,
percent, 100%. In fact, one of the hardest things for me to accept as a guy who cares probably more about other people than he does himself is understanding that I can't save everyone because some people are just they're not
yeah.
gonna listen.
Yeah, so this is basically going to go out to the people that need to hear it and are willing to hear it. Carly, and you set up your Dark Matters as well. This is an example of trying to create a platform for people that want to get the truth right, and people like John O'Looney are perfect for this, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, when I met John at the talk, at the Truth Talks, like I say, you could hear a pin drop. People were like really poised. And I think, as I say, I deal a lot with the occult and the esoteric and the breaking down of language. And I think for that kind of, like you said, JC, that middle group, that can be a little bit much at first, because so that like John being on the ground and telling it as it is, and just shooting like literally from the hip on the ground like that,
Mm.
people really respond to it, and it's like it's super duper important. Like it's like say it's saving lives. I remember early on, we all got lynched, didn't we? I mean, I spoke out right from the beginning, and I was disgusting. People are dying, and I was like, no more than normal according to the Office for National Statistics. Even that wasn't kind of enough at that time. And I did a couple of videos on viral theory, like I broke viral theory down. I mean, germ theory was out the window then. It was all about that terrain. And the only way you can, catch a virus is if one is injected into you. And we know the deaths have been since the jabs. And obviously, what they did in the care homes, etc., and so on. But I remember a few people reaching out to me and saying if they hadn't watched those videos, and again, I got lynched for them. You're a nutter. You're crazy. Get your tinfoil hat
Mm.
on, etc., and so on. But a few people, well, quite a lot of people messaged me and said if they hadn't watched that, they would have had it. So that's how important it is, isn't it? Just to keep
Yeah.
speaking out, like and then it's never been more important. This is they say they want the reset, yeah, and we want the great reveal. And if you're talking about scripture and we get into the script of things, it's the reveal or the revelation of the method, or the book of Revelation. I think it's
Mhm.
on that precipice of and like I say, just us all keeping on, really doing what we're doing, and you're
Yeah.
both amazing at that.
Absolutely. And John, well, thank you for that. But I was going to say, John, you're an example of someone that, you did go along with the narrative to start off with. And you said, there was no one that wanted to be more wrong than you when you started to realize what you realized, right?
100%. So for me, I can tell you I'm a good guy. I'm not perfect. I don't pretend to be perfect. I look back on my life And in hindsight, I've got regrets. Who hasn't, you know? But with certainly with COVID, you know, I think the fundamental reason for success with COVID was the fact that for the most part, people are fundamentally good. So when they released something like this, I had no reason to disbelieve it. And let me explain. If I go to the hospital and I collect a deceased, and that deceased has HIV, has died from AIDS, or has died from tuberculosis, or something similar, you know, we're informed that this deceased is infectious, and they're usually in a sealed body bag, and you're very cautious. Mark my words, you know. And so when they're showing pictures on mainstream TV of people falling over and dying in the streets in China, and they're talking about a disease that destroys the lungs and kills you, and we're all told, I mean, Boris Johnson openly said, didn't he, that everyone was going to lose someone in their family. Do you know what that would be the natural reaction? I never dreamed that. You know, I was never a conspiracy theorist. I'm a professional funeral director running a funeral home. So you know, I very much did believe it. But I guess I spent a lot of time when I was a young man. I was on the door, and I'm not easily kind of intimidated or led. And I think that was probably a saving thing for me, because when I took a phone call in March of 2021, no, 2020, and it was from a guy who identified himself as John. I've still got his mobile number on my phone. And he said he's worked for a government-sponsored company called Pandemic Resilience. And he went on to explain that his job was to call all of the local funeral directors in the area. And he would call every Monday, and he would ask me a number of questions. And I was happy to answer those questions. You know, why would you not? And he asked me how many I'd picked up deceased, where from, and what my capacity was, how many I could hold, and how many were COVID that I'd picked up that week. And this was at a time when the doctors had stopped attending deaths to certify deaths, and we were all told that this was to protect the NHS, which I think, on reflection at the time, knowing what we did, was probably a wise move, because if there's a disease here that's going to decimate anyone who comes into contact, the people we needed to protect were the doctors, the medical professionals that were going to go on to save lives. So it made perfect sense. And I bought into the narrative, not realizing, you know, it was all BS. So I would tell him this, and almost straight away he started steering me. And because of my background in working on the doors and in security and being assertive under pressure, I wasn't buying that bullshit, to be honest with you. So I kind of called him out, and he openly admitted in the end that he'd been instructed to label everyone as a COVID death. And in fact, in October of 2020, he openly admitted to me on the phone. He said, I don't know why I'm doing this job. Everyone is saying the same thing, and by everyone he meant all the undertakers. There are no COVID deaths.
Wow.
You know, well, I kind of knew that by then, and June, July, I kind of realised what was going on. Obviously, my awareness hadn't extended as far as to know the jabs were poisonous, but I certainly knew by that period of time that they were lying about COVID. It is what it is. The rest has all been well talked about and well documented, but I knew by about June, July, and I started shouting about it around the same sort of time. I remember having a period of 4 or 6 weeks where I kind of knew, but kind of didn't want to know, and I was worried about saying anything because of my business, you know, and you know, we were all branded lepers if we said anything, weren't we? You know, I know certainly me, I was discredited. People were calling me mad, and my own brother called me dangerous. You know, and I feel bitterly sorry. I kind of mourn the loss of the relationship because I had with him, but it is what it is. And I realized, you know, you have to focus on the people you can save, not the people you can't. And sadly, he wouldn't listen. I dread to think how many jabs he's had, but he's had them. It's done. That's it. So I've got to focus on trying to save someone else's brother by telling them the truth, you know, and that was the aim. And hopefully I've managed to, you know, to help that, to do that.
Can I just ask, John? Thanks for sharing that, by the way. You know, people were getting ill and they were getting, you know, like weren't, you know, losing the taste and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What do you put that down to then?
It was man-made and man-delivered. I suspect common sense tells me that was an engineered bioweapon. They probably had teams that were out in various venues where there was a high concentration of public and spread it out. you know, and the idea was to hospitalize people and then finish people off with malfeasance in the hospitals, your
Mm.
remdesivir, your midazolam, your forced ventilation to blow their lungs out, and label them a COVID death. You know, it was one of the patterns that I noticed as well. Was people were coming into me and throughout 2020, and they were told they'd lost their loved one to COVID. You know, it's very difficult to say to them, you know, you can't say to them, well, it weren't COVID when they've lost their mum. You know, you can't do that. They can't use a funeral director. But the pattern that I was noticing was none of them went into hospital with it. They all seemed to be catching it in there, in the hospital environment. And the way that worked is mum would go in with a water infection. She would be spam tested with a PCR until they managed to get a positive result. Then she would be transferred to a COVID ward where she would be treated with drugs like remdesivir, baricitinib, tocilizumab, midazolam, ventilation, and ultimately end up, for the most part, dying a COVID death. That was the reality, you know, and that's what happened. And that generated money for the hospitals, so they were happy. The doctors were happy. I've spoken to families who were offered a free funeral if they were allowed to put COVID on their mum's death certificate. Loads of them. And because when you speak out and you people engage with you and you go public and lots of people feel they can trust you, so they reach out to you and they tell their story. My inbox, I've got 33,000 emails in my inbox from doctors, nurses, police, politicians, activists, and more harrowingly, victims. And the story they tell is all the same sort of story, really. It's heartbreaking. And it's I can tell you, it's a terrible burden to carry. You'll never
Yeah.
know. You'll never know. But I do it, and every email makes me that bit more determined. And at last now, we're starting to see some fruit bearing, aren't we? Where my hope is these people will be brought to justice. And Carly touched on it earlier, where the German government, there's an FOI gone into them. But obviously, I'll let her tell more about that because she
Mm.
knows more than me about that.
Yeah, Carly. I mean, he's John's being proved right you know, day after day now, isn't he? Like it's all coming out slowly and but surely. You know, John has been vindicated, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was only just sent that video actually, and of course, this video will not make YouTube, etc. But what I will do is do a little promo clip of it because of you know we know what they're doing to free speech, you know, the decimation of that. uh, the law, the legislation that they've just brought out in Scotland about, you know, hate crime, hate speech, etc., and so on, just to further just try and shut us all up. But I think it was a huge psyop, wasn't it? And that's basically what the German government have admitted in this latest video, put under pressure and a lawsuit under freedom of information, heavily redacted, I think, some of this stuff, but basically, yeah, they've said that there was no pandemic. I mean, if we, you know, I like my words. If we look at the definition of pandemic, you know, it has to meet a certain criteria, and there just wasn't one. I mean, that's what I did in the early days. You know, just kind of defined these words and showed these terms, and you know, I mean, like I say, I tend to look at things very much so from a kind of a bit of an occult perspective, but and from the language. But as I say, the law, the journey of the law and the journey of the spirit are the same. So when you know, government is, you know, governare from the Latin governare and mens the mind. So government literally means mind control, and the life is in the blood. So that's what they've gone for. Because in scripture, and again, I'm not into organized religion. Religion means to hold back, to thwart, to bind, from the Latin religiae. Latin itself actually means to deceive, because they're constantly telling us all the time. They told us what they were doing in their legalese, and again, I've seen in real time, and like John on the grind, a good friend of mine a while back, does the bloods, and I saw we got hold of Pfizer vials, etc., and so on, and we were looking at it under the microscope in real time, doing tests on, you know, vaccinated blood, and this blood was just clumped together. It was dead, and then we put the vials next to, you know, alive or living, you know, fresh blood or unvaccinated blood, and literally the blood would, you put the vial on, and the blood would, you've probably seen this on the blood on the slide, literally would move back from the Pfizer vial or the Johnson, whichever one it was. So you know, I've seen these things in real time, and like I say, we all kind of screamed and shouted about it, but we were all branded, you know, tinfoil hat, conspiracy wearing, you know, nut jobs. But that's why it was dead important for me to kind of just break the codes down and break And it's just it's another, you know, it sounds a bit dramatic, but it's been a blood sacrifice, another huge big blood sacrifice, a blood ritual, because that's what the Vatican is. The Vatican is a serpent blood cult, and that is in their legalese, that's in their language, that's their symbols, and it's been a venom bite. That's what, it was clumping the blood, wasn't it, John? Like the way that it was, you know, and causing these, you know, the clot shot, as it kind of, you know, got termed. So yeah, I mean, it all fits in with, and they were telling us, and I know you, John, and what's that thing they used in the pandemic, that speak, that double speak, isn't it? That Orwellian. There's a name for it, and we talked about it when we last chatted, where they say one word, but it means another. And is
Yeah,
it
it's
there was
kind of there's loads of double speak that they've kind of done during the pandemic,
mm,
but most of it is the trouble is people can't see a war unless there's bullets and blood. But this is a war, a spiritual war, a mental war. And what it's done is it's played on the basic principle of fear and greed. So people they've created a society in the West of consumerism and of greed. Everyone is chasing the new iPhone, the better PC, the 4x4, the bigger house, material things, and we've stopped caring about each other. And when I cast my mind back to, for example, when I was a kid, I knew everyone in my street. I knew the number of the door they lived at, and FaceTime was you went and knocked on the door and asked for Jimmy. You know, is he coming out to play or whatever? But now we have a generation where they don't know live next door and they don't want to know. They just want a virtual life. I watch mums going down the road on a phone with a pram, not engaging with their child at all, just solely. I go into a restaurant, I see whole families on a device doing selfies, you know, while they're supposed to be eating a meal together in a restaurant. It's really, really bizarre. And you're kind of, I suppose to a degree, one of the most telling things for me is a school photo. You know, when I look at class of 84, for example, which is when I left, I'm sad to admit I'm 56 now, so I left in 84. And you look at a school photo and you've got 26 happy, lean, well balanced, polite, well mannered kids. You know, you look at a photo now, half of them are morbidly obese. You've got a couple of transgenders. You've got two with autism, an ADHD one, and one who thinks they're a cat. You know, are we going forwards or are we going backwards
Mm.
collectively as a society? It's clear we're going backwards in massive strides. You know, people are out there with a moral compass, and I think they see through it. And I can tell you, they can lock down, they can mandate, they can do whatever they like. They've lost the public now. These people have lost the public, and even those that are quietest and not saying anything and perhaps frightened because they've allowed themselves to have these injections inside them, the numbers are growing. The government have lost the public, and I think they also realise not only have they lost the public, the politics has lost the public generally. So that be Labour or Tory, because it's two sides of the same coin. There is no democracy. And I sat at a meeting in Westminster back in September of 2021 with Sir Graham Brady, who was at the time he was commissioner of something called the 1922 committee. So he's a top politician in the country. They hire and fire the prime ministerial candidates. And he openly admitted when he was told what was happening and who would die and how and when, long before these excess death rates went through the roof, he knew, he was told. And at that time, he openly admitted to a room full of people, I cannot stop it. It's well above my pay grade. He didn't say above my pay grade. He said well above my pay grade. So there are
mm,
clearly many tiers above the Prime Minister and above Commissioner of the 1922 Committee. And the fact that even after what's happened, he's been made King's Privy Council. So that kind of tells you that crime, in fact, does pay in the current system that we've got. And the hope is that the more outrageous and dark these, the more people will see it, and we can overrun them. We can turn our backs to them collectively because we are their power. That's the hope, you know. And it has to get extremely dark, I believe, for people to clamour to get back into the light. And that doesn't mean going on the rampage and destroying them, because I think it's a higher level of consciousness that's required than just violence, you know, because you lower yourself to their level then. And let me tell you, these people in power, they're craving civil unrest. They need civil unrest to go to the next level to deploy these young men, these UN troops. That's the reality. So my hope is that by waking people up with truth, that we can come together and we can all just turn our backs on them, and maybe that will mean we'll forge our own parallel society, is my hope. You know, where we go back to perhaps some of the bartering system, or our own coinage, gold and silver, or, you know, just a different society outside of that society. And I think it wouldn't be too long before you would see people coming over in numbers, in larger numbers, until in the end, these were just soulless shadows sitting in Westminster with no one, you know, because that's what they're nothing. They're nothing. You know,
Mm.
I don't doubt there's a God and he will deal with them.
Yeah. Carly, I know you've probably got a lot to say on that, especially, John touched upon there the, potentially a breakaway, with the people that want to go into the smart cities and they want to kind of be totally surveilled and, be in that kind of reality. But then you've got the ones that want to completely exempt themselves from it and go back to the land, go back to community-based, living. Can you see it going that way? Because I know that with what John's talking about here, surely with all the people that are vax damaged and all the families that are losing people from the vaccine, we're going to get loads more anti-vaxxers, aren't we? And we're going to create more of a pushback on this types of thing. Surely there has to be a bit of a tipping point that we're going to reach, right? How do you see things going, with what's been going on? And do you think on some spiritual level, as the darkness comes in, it actually wakes us up a little bit more and it has a speeding up effect on consciousness?
Yeah, definitely. And a big part of what I do is showing people that difference between what's lawful and what's legal. I mean, there's a huge distinct split there. Like John said, how they mandated it. You must close your business.
Mm.
You basically threatening. Fear and force has been basically utilized for thousands of years to keep the people in line. And it's these same families from antiquity that are still in these positions of power, and it's corrupt and it's biblical. And even when we look at politics, many ticks, many parasites, government, mind control. Again, they're telling us all the time. The red and the blue of voting. Vote comes from the Latin to volt. The polls, it's an energy harvest. It's like
Mm.
what my granddad used to say. If it made any difference, they won't let you do it. And that's like a classic northern phrase, and that's voting. And we know that these people are all corporate entities from the city of London, and of in legalese means without. So it's the city without London, run by the tribe of Dan, which goes again back to scripture, back to biblical, which is the 13th order of the dragon, the Draco, the serpent cult, the serpent bite. And that's why the city of London is surrounded by 13 dragons. They're telling us all the time. So this idea that, we were what, like I make a joke, what is a mandate? It's actually a contractual term, because all corporations can do, corp is dead, is speak to the dead. So they need to lower our status, just like John says. They think they're above us because but they are in legal terms, because they give us titles to lower our status. And I have a big thing about, we've just forgotten who we are. And it goes back to this idea of transhumanism and virtual reality, like John said, of the youth of today. They kind of want it in a way, and they're kind of getting lost in that. And it's another layer of that dream within a dream, really. But back to kind of more practical stuff and the legal stuff, you didn't have to do it. But again, it was that fear, that force. You're doing it to save granny, the double speak, the double think. And it's like I say, it's that if you did survive it, and you didn't fall for it, you have just survived the greatest psyop that we've seen in history. And like John said, not all wars are bullets. And on a battlefield like that, it was done on the mind and the power of the conscious, and we know how powerful that is. So people kind of rounded up themselves and queued up to inject themselves. But again, it was so coercive and it was so deceitful. But the devil is, the devil's a bit of a trickster, and a bit of that it's, they kind of want to do it with our own free will, but without going too far off the boil, really, with that one. But yeah, so it's certainly my job is to try and empower people to say that, yeah, we can create the new, because it was always us that has the power. It's always been us that has the highest status. It isn't them. There's a universal maxim: he who creates owns. So we created government, not the other way around. But again, it's just all these illusions are starting to fall down. It's the fall of Rome, isn't it, really? I believe that, they're going down, but again, like John says, they're ready for that pushback, and that's why they've got these men of fighting age in our hotels. Where's the women and children with them? Why are they turning up with mobile phones and MasterCards? And Anna de Bissaret, the lawyer, many people may know her name, she was ex-military. She's been shouting about this for quite a long time, that they're training them in the Ukraine, training them in Turkey. And Ukraine used to be old Khazaria, which was Canaan, which was Canaanite, which is where we get Canaan law from. This has been going on, good for evil has been going on a very long time. And I do believe this is the apocalypse, which just basically means the unveiling. And as that happens, there will be a split, and not, I hope, not in a divisive way. Like, say, all we can keep doing is doing what we do, planting seeds, and creating the new, because creating is the closest to the creator, and that's against evil. So we and they want division, don't they? That's the biggest tool. That's the biggest weapon. So
Yeah.
vaccinated, not vaccinated, Islamic, Christian, whatever it is. But no, if we all just stop that and stop playing into their hands in that way as well, that it's division. I think, is it Albert Pike, that Freemason, the famous
Yeah.
Freemason? He wrote that letter where he laid out the three world wars, and we're in kind of the last one now. So they're
Mm.
going for it, which is why they're trying to, yeah, transhumanism, transgender, anything that inverts this decimation of our land, Great Britain. And Great Britain means the people of the covenant. They're lying about what this land is, and etc. But that's another huge podcast. But
Mm.
yeah, I think we just got to keep on going on, creating the new, creating awareness. And I think it is just an awareness tip. We've got to just kind of keep shining our light on that dark, and keep speaking out.
Do you think there's a place where we have to sort of start creating the solutions and creating the new projects and new communities and build it that way rather than push back on the negative, and what you resist persists a little bit. Is there anything that we can do, John? I mean, what do you think would be positive action steps from this point of view beyond just raising awareness?
People don't like being held accountable, is the bottom line. They love to say they were just doing what they were doing because they were doing what they were told to do. I'll give you a typical example. Is my son's school, Hazley School in Milton Keynes. He started there. He's in year 8 now. He started last year in year 7. I contacted the school and said, as an undertaker, my son is starting your school in September. I'm an undertaker. I've seen many deaths from the vaccines. As a direct result, I understand you have an immunization policy and immunization nurse there. Don't touch my child. I will hold you personally accountable if you do. So I didn't get a reply to the email. 3-4 days later, I received a call from a girl called Sarah. She said, "Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm the immunization nurse at Hazley. It's just a quick phone call regarding your email." So I kind of said, okay. And I went on to explain what I'd seen. And I thought she'd be shocked and horrified. No, she went, "Oh, yes, I know the risks." I was like, okay. I said, so Sarah, I said, "Tell me, have you got any children?" And she said, "Yes, I've got 2." She said, I think she said they were 8 and 10. And I said, "Well, would you have them vaccinated?" She went, "Oh, no." I said, okay. And it kind of threw me a little bit because it wasn't the kind of response that I expected from someone who's supposed to be a school immunization nurse. And I said, "So the risks of these vaccinations, the damage they're doing. You've got kids of your own that you won't vaccinate, but you'll vaccinate mine." She said, "Yes." She said, "I have to. It's my job." And therein lies the problem. So what people need to do is actually give these people notice of liability, personal liability, because you've taken the time to warn them. And don't do it on a phone call. Do it on an email. CC some friends in where there's a paper trail. And I can tell you, I've spoken to people who also have contact with this immunization nurse who openly admit. One of them was a teacher that reached out to me who works at a private school in Milton Keynes, and 4 of the kids there developed myocardia after being vaccinated. 4 kids in Milton Keynes private school. So they're very well aware of what's going on. They're being very quiet about it, and they're just keeping, a low profile. We're only doing what we're told. Hold them accountable. Serve them notice. Look into serving them notice. You can do that. And what you tend to find is if someone believes they're going to be held accountable for doing something that they know is wrong, they won't do it. So what they then do is they tell the parents, "Go and get your kids vaccinated privately." Because I was also told they did consider trying to use Gillick competence at school. So the idea is you drop your child off, they then vaccinate your child, because when you leave your child in the school, they take over parental custody of those children. And under Gillick competence, and that was following a case where a young girl was prescribed the contraceptive pill. Underage, I believe 13 or 14 or 12. And the mother found these contraceptive pills in her room, went and tackled the surgery, and the surname of that family was Gillick. And a ruling was made over that, and it's called Gillick competence, and that's where they can literally do pretty much what they want, because you give them custody of your child when the child crosses the school threshold. They toyed with doing that, and then I think they knew that they would probably get lynched, and backtracked on that and just put it out there to see what parents would submit their kids to be poisoned. And that's what's happened now. A number of these kids have got heart conditions. One of them, I'm told, actually collapsed immediately on being injected. And I've since emailed the school, because I tell you for why, my lad is top 2%, right? In everything academically, and that's not because I'm in any way a genius. That's because my lad has been brought up properly. He's bright and he has a moral compass, and he knows when he goes to school, it's time to listen and learn. And the messing about is for after school, So I had an email one particular morning. His attendance is fantastic. We got an email saying, "Oh, Tommy was 2 minutes late this morning. Had to register at the." And I said, "Listen." Don't write to me about my son being 2 minutes late when you're poisoning kids. And then I told them their account that I've just told you. They won't even respond. If I was wrong, they'd be quick enough to respond, threatening legal action, and they won't, because they know that I'm right and they know I can come up with the evidence. And I'll quote that, Sarah, and I'll show them the exchange I've had with the teachers as well. So it's clear what's happening. The trouble is people just don't know it yet. People don't realize yet. I'm sure the parents of the kids who have now got ruined hearts and probably going to live up to 5 years are very aware now, but it's too late.
Yeah. You know what? I think they really overplayed their hand when they went after the kids. I think that actually
Yeah.
woke up a lot of the moderates. That was the point where that they went, not that it wasn't too far anyway, but when they started going for the kids, that was when a lot of people started to wake up around me, like the kind of your average sort of normie kind of mainstreamer. Can I ask you, Carly, John's mentioning there about serving notice. Do you have anything on that? Because I'd quite like to, if we can maybe mention to the audience how we can do this, what's the right procedure to do it?
Yeah, get
Because
some template letters up or something.
Yeah,
yeah, it'd be
yeah. I
really
mean,
good if we can create some kind of blueprint, some kind of template, and then we can use that, and then we can, because it's not just for the jabs either. This is quite a useful protocol, useful thing to use, isn't it?
yeah, learning to draft a notice, like a legal notice. Obviously, emails can still be, it's not being classed as technically served, but it's always best paper. Paper, legal means form, but certainly, yeah, written. So emails are way better than, ringing up and having these conversations over the phone, unless you're recording them and let them know you're recording them. But like John says, you're making them personally and publicly liable. Teachers, politicians, they're supposed to have a higher duty of care. And if they're doing something, I was just doing my job. It's kind of that, it didn't work at Nuremberg as a defense, and it doesn't work now, I'm afraid. They've got to take this, we've all got to take personal responsibility and accountability. But like John said earlier, people are so willing just to give it away. I'm just doing my job. I'm just doing what I'm told. We're programmed heavily from through schooling and through, you trust the doctor, you trust the guy in the white coat. Even when I go to the vets, the guy used to get my pets vaccinated 10 years ago. I'm thinking, wow, now I know what I know, even like what they've done to us, that it makes us sick. And it, like John says, when you're dropping your child off, child in legalese means chattel, it means property to the state, because when we register anything, regis means of the king, we register the child, you register your car, you register your property at land registry, and we own, it's that he who creates own. We created our children, we own them, but we register in our ignorance, because we don't know the system, because we're purposely not taught it, right? So like John says, when you drop your child off at school, it comes under a doctrine called parens patriae, which means the parent is the state. So we're classed as naughty children, even the parents, the people that now rent the children back from the state. Children is chattel, because it's the consideration of the marriage. They're valuable to the state via the birth bond or the birth certificate. But certainly serving a legal notice like that, yeah, absolutely, 100% you can put them on notice. I know in the early days there was a lot of that going on, and I think perhaps that's, I don't know, probably still is to a degree. But like getting that awareness out, definitely, it's quite easy to draft a notice, something quite simple, like John says, a notice of liability, because nobody wants to take liability, right? This is why you'll always get things, whether it's a bill or a tax bill. No one will ever sign it, because as the Baron taught me, no one wants to take liability for the liability. So that's exactly what's happening now. And what we know that they will do is they'll use nurses and teachers, and they will be the fall guys at the end of the day. Like John said, above government, there's something far higher and there's something far darker orchestrating all this. And the minions will be the ones that will take the fall in the end. So it's even more important for us to kind of get this message over to these people. And like I say, us jumping up and down and shouting about it, that's not legal notice, but serving an actual notice is. And then, like John says, you've got a paper record, you've got a paper trail, because you have, like I say, the law works on presumptions, assumptions, tacit acquiescence, which is our silence, and hearsay. So until you rebut the presumption that they have the authority over your child to do that, we'll say child freeze or your son or daughter, then that's exactly the presumption that they'll take. But
Mm.
yeah, absolutely is the answer to that. That's a
We can
long-winded
draw, we'll
answer.
draft something up, right? And then we'll, because I
Yeah,
think it's important because people need to have some kind of avenue they can go down to pursue, to
People
put
need
pressure
the
on.
tool. They need the
Yeah,
toolkit. They've got the
yeah,
will. They just don't have the knowledge, or perhaps
yeah.
they need a little bit of encouragement. And trust me, there's no greater motivation than saving your child from being killed.
Yeah, there are some groups, and what I will do is, because like I primarily deal in debt, and I deal with, like, we have the trust and the beginners law course as well. That's a huge thing we're doing with Pete Stone in connection with the Sovereign Project, so that people can come and start to learn all this, learn the deception and the trick that has been played on us all. Yeah, we're all starting to become aware of it, and we're all starting to shine light on it. But I do know people who deal with this specifically, and I will find them who you work with, on the ground, serving the notices in the schools and etc. So yeah, I'll certainly get those connections, but we can certainly draft a notice. That's no problem. Like a
yeah.
basic template that people can use. I can do that. No problem.
Yeah, fantastic. But just going back to that, I mean, the doctors and nurses have got, blood on their hands, basically. The NHS has got blood on their hands. Morality for them was just following orders rather than just doing what they know is right. The Hippocratic Oath just went totally out the window, didn't it, John? There's some of them, a lot of them have reached out to you now. What are they saying? Are they saying that they regret it? Are they saying that, do they feel as though their morality's been abdicated because they were just following orders? Like what, how have they
Some of
approached
them,
it?
yeah. So what we're seeing is a reaction to fear. Is the fear of losing your job, the fear of losing your ability to be able to be in general practice. And the mistake we've made as a society, we've made general practice a really very well rewarded job. They can all plead poverty, can't they? But I think the last figures that I saw, they were averaging about 150K a year, and that was before COVID. So many of them have. I've had a wide range, a broad spectrum of responses. One GP was in here a little while ago, and she said she's made that. I look for a gateway. So when these GPs come into me, I look for an opportunity to tackle them because I love putting them on the spot and just to see how aware they all are, and they all know. And the last one was a lady who was in here to visit a deceased to do cremation paperwork. And I said to her, she said, "Are you busy?" And I said, "Well, we're busy." I said, "You're seeing them as well." I said, "All these vaccine recipients." And she looked at me and she looked at the floor. She said, "Yes, it's a terrible world, isn't it?" And then we have other responses where I said, "Are you seeing one from Wadden Health Centre locally?" I said to this particular GP, "Are you seeing more deaths in vaccine recipients?" And he looked at the floor and he shuffled his feet and he said, "Yes, everybody knows." And by everybody, he meant all the GPs know, and they're still taking a tenner a pop to throw an injection in their arm. It's bizarre. And when you think about it logically, it takes between 5 and 7 years to become a GP. A lot of money invested, because they've kind of priced that level of education out of the scope of the common man, haven't they now? And so these people are very reluctant to throw away their careers for the death of a patient for following government policy. And do you know what? Under normal circumstances, I would say so, but when you have a secret and you know that secret, and that secret is that these vaccines are killing members of your own patients who are coming to see you for help, and you've made a Hippocratic oath to help them, and you're not fulfilling that oath, and you're keeping that secret that these injections are killing people. How long is it acceptable to keep a secret before you cross that boundary and become complicit in that crime? Is it 2 weeks? Is it 3 weeks? Is it 5 weeks? Is it 6 months? Is it a year? Is it 2 years? Is it 3 years? How long do you keep injecting children that then present with cancers, with myocardia, and a range of other ailments shortly after being jabbed, when you're seeing people in their 30s and their 40s dying within weeks? And they're so desperate now, even Wikipedia is discrediting turbo cancer. I can tell you the people coming through my door who have lost their mum from lung cancer in 8 weeks, start to finish, from asymptomatic to dead, 8 weeks, 16 weeks, 12 weeks, 6 weeks in some cases. These are not people in their 70s and 80s, the normal people that you'd expect to die. And even then, not that quickly. But these are people 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, people that wouldn't normally die, So I think the dam of lies is well and truly broken now, and it's pouring through. I think the information is out there if you want it. What do we do collectively about it? I really don't know. It's going to be very interesting when they announce the next lockdown. I believe that's a key moment for us, isn't it?
Yeah.
What will that be? Will that be climate change? Possibly. Will that be because of a UFO, i.e. Project Bluebeam they toyed with? We're getting a lot of reports of UFOs everywhere now. Are they going to try that on, or is it going to be another pandemic? I suspect probably they'll end up going for the pandemic thing. People are not stupid. They see through the UFO lie. Are there other people out there? I think potentially yes. Would that be enough to make us have a lockdown? I'm sure if they could get here, they'd be that much more advanced. Nothing hiding in our house isn't going to save us, is it? So that, any critically minded person can see through that concept as being the crap that it is. A climate change lockdown, me staying in my house is not going to help the climate. If anything else, it's going to make the climate worse, because I'm going to sit indoors on my PC, or I'm going to watch TV, I'm going to be playing a game, I'm going to be burning power. Whereas if I was out and about, I would be losing it. So the argument for climate change lockdown, again, is bollocks. It's just total rubbish. So I think the most likely one is the pandemic lockdown. And I think that's going to be on the back of, we've got the WHO being ushered in, despite hundreds of thousands of people complaining they won't bring it to debate in Parliament. They're going to usher them in. So what these people are going to do then is they're going to declare a pandemic based on numbers that we currently have dying now. The numbers are already there. To declare there's a pandemic, and then I suspect they'll announce another lockdown, and they'll see how the public react to that. And I can tell you they're not going to react well. There's going to be civil unrest, and that's the civil unrest they want. The young men are here to police that lockdown, and it is going to happen. People can say, "Oh, it's not going to be a conspiracy." All right then, but I kind of welcome it when it comes. And don't get me wrong, I don't welcome it when it comes because I want civil unrest or I want anyone hurt. In fact, exactly the opposite. But I do want to see these criminals brought to justice and this to end. And the only way it will do so is when it gets undeniably dark and people see these people on the streets armed and they see the truth. It's so dark, it's undeniable. Then the masses will see it. What will they do about it? I don't know how strong the human resolve is. How strong is the human spirit? How strong are people's moral compass? How much do they value the futures for their children? I would die for my son. That's why I've taken the stand that I have. I would die for your son or your daughter, and that's why I've taken the stand that I have. I don't do it for me. If I was bothered about me, I wouldn't have said nothing. So that's kind of where I am. I'm going to welcome the dystopia when it comes, and they're already starting to try and roll it out in Oxford now, the 15-minute zone. So people need to say bollocks, keep cutting the cameras down, and keep raising public awareness, and gradually they're losing. The government are losing the people. They're losing them. It's going to be a landslide victory for Labour. I don't think that's going to be the cure because it's two sides of the same coin, but it has to get dark now for people to want better, don't it? And I believe that they will. I think there's more good in the world than bad, and I think we will prevail, but I think it has to get really dark for people to see it for what it is.
Yeah. That was kind of what we were saying earlier, wasn't it, Carly? I mean, sometimes, these, 9/11 woke a lot of people up. Sometimes these psyops, they have a sharpening effect on the collective awareness, I think. So, I mean, I think John's right there. It has to get kind of dark for people to actually really see it because, I mean, things were getting pretty dark before, in the last 4 years, and people still weren't quite waking up. I've got this thing where people could be put up against a wall with a gun to their head, and the penny still might not drop because they think they're doing it for the greater good. But what do you think? Do you think it will get to the point where it's just so obvious and flagrant that people are just going to have to see it for what it is?
I think it's
Yeah,
like what you said, JC. I think there's some people who will not wake up and what is awake, a party for the dead. I think just shining light, being aware. But like John says, this has been done in the majority a lot by ignorance, but ignorance is no defense of the law. Good people doing bad things because they were ignorant to it. Actually, getting injected or injecting others because they thought they were saving granny. That's the basic simplest. Staying inside their homes because and they were doing it because they thought they were saving lives. Stay home, save lives, etc., and so on. Whereas we knew different. So and again, without getting to into scripture, but it says at the end of days, good will be seen as evil, and evil will be seen as good. So we were the ones that were demonized. We were the ones that were just speaking out and trying to help, etc. But I think you're right too, JC, because the darker the to show us what we are not, and we see it and we say no. And I think we can do the notices. I can empower people lawfully, John can empower people, you can empower people, and we all do it in our own way. But the common denominator in there is that we're all speaking out. And like John says, we're willing to lose everything to do it. And if everybody just did that and did their bit, then it would be game over tomorrow. But again, I think a lot of people, you have to ask the question, and that's why we kind of get so frustrated. Why can't they see it? I mean, it's so blatant now. This kind of satanic, agenda. And that is in the legal system with the Saturnian robes. They're coding it in all the time, but where they were kind of hiding it, they're not now, are they? They're going for it because that's that Albert Pike thing. They want Lucifer out on the main stage and everybody just agrees to it. And however they get to that, whether that's alien invasion, more pandemics, more ridiculousness. And then we say, why can't those people see it? Well, it's because they've not asked the question. And as I say, it's the question that drives us. So that creates that neural pathway. So if we're just going, it's this, it's this, it's this, it's this, it's like they're on a different vibrational like
Mm.
trajectory, isn't it? So it's like what you said, JT. We've got to just kind of just keep on doing what we're doing, and I think it will be darkest before the dawn. Unfortunately, there's going to be a lot weirder, a lot darker shit, pardon my French, that's going to be thrown at us before, it's like chucking a turd in a fan. Yeah, I think, and this year, the year of the X, because that's another code that they
Mm.
code to each other all the time. It's the 2 4, it's the 6. This is going to be a very interesting year, a bit of a dark year, where we all kind of do need to kind of like stick together and just keep unified. Those that know, and those that don't. So,
Yeah, it's
and they become
interesting.
agents in that matrix sense, don't they? They become the agent Smiths up, without going again a bit too wacky, but
The X is interesting. The disease X, the X Twitter, the John. That you mentioned the prisons, the X.
that's right.
There's a lot of that going on. Yeah, I don't know if you know
It's
this,
all
Carly,
the
but John,
sign
would
of
you?
Lucifer.
Yeah, John, could you just mention about that? You said about how they're putting people into prison with an X or something.
So they look at the huge new prisons that are being, and now I'm 56. I've listened to many Home Office ministers talk about pre-election promises, manifesto promises that are never legally binding and never kept. And yet they've seen a priority to build huge new super prisons at a time when we're in the worst economic downturn since World War II and in the middle of a terrible alleged pandemic. They need super prisons and many of them. And what they've done is they've built them on existing sites. So that it's touted as modernization, but in fact, when an old prison could hold 1,600, for example, and then holds 20,000, you have to see the huge increase there. And I would urge people to use Google Earth, their own weapon against them, and go and have a look at these prisons online. Gartree Prison, there's one in Essex, HMP Five Wells in Wellingborough. Have a look at them. And coincidentally, I'm sure they're all built in the big shape of an X. The same X that is obviously to do with Satanism. But Carly would tell you more about that. But it is It's pretty sinister stuff. But again, I welcome these people doing it, because the more they do it, and I'm hearing that Sadiq Khan's looking likely to be re-elected for Mayor of London again. And again, whilst many Londoners, or the few that are left, will be saddened, I kind of welcome it, because as long as they keep installing these people into these positions to further destroy things, more and more people are going to wake up and they're going to see it, aren't they? So, and that's the only way, I mean, it says in the Bible, only the truth will set us free.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, when you asked before, like, you don't know which site they're going to bring. I think it's going to be a mixture. It's going to be a combination of, a lot of different things altogether. I mean, I just had on Mark Byford. He's a farmer. He was talking about how the World Economic Forum have made it so difficult for them to produce their own food now and jump through as many hoops as possible, that they're just having to give the farmland up. Bill Gates is basically in America, and it's coming over here now, and they're encouraging all the farmers to give up the food produce and just grow flowers, and they're also given an extra financial incentive to do so as well, or sell the whole thing up for 100 grand. So you can see how it's all being monopolized. It's being hit
Yeah.
on every level here, and it's all connects into the idea of controlling society from the from every level basically, and so that it all gets into the hands of the few.
Yeah, I've spoke to many farmers who have told me what's going on there. So they get paid extra money not to grow anything, and they have to spray their land 4 times a year, and they can only plant seeds that the government provides, genetically modified seeds. I don't know what these seeds are for. I'm assuming some sort of aggressive plant that's very difficult to get out of the earth. Probably Japanese knotweed or something like that, knowing these bastards. But that's what's happening. They're systematically destroying the food chain. So that includes beef and chicken and the bird flu they're constantly on about. I mean, I was hearing about another big cull in America of a couple of million birds only this week. I think it was I can't remember now. I did post it on the Twitter. Somebody threw the link over to me. But it's a concerted attack on farming. And this is why, when have you ever seen hundreds and hundreds of farmers protesting? You haven't. They've always been on a really good number, haven't they, with their EU grants and stuff like that. They've always been more than happy to sit there. I've never known a skimp farmer. You're seeing it now. You're seeing these farmers very unhappy now, because without farms, there's no food. Without no food, there's going to be a famine. And you've got, of course, Gates investing in things like insect factories and 3D printing fake meat and stuff like that. I don't want to eat that. I don't care what Bill Gates wants. He's an unelected. He's got no qualifications at all. What right has he to dictate to me and my family what we can and can't eat, and whether farmers can farm? But again, it has to get really dark for people to see it. Let these people do their worst, because I can tell you now, they're going to be overrun. They will be overrun. Their days are like a flower in the field. Very soon, the wind of change is going to blow over them, and its place will know no more. And then the hope is that we can rebuild the things that they've destroyed. The hope is that we can install people with a moral compass in positions that they need to be in to oversee and guide people to do this. We can be closer and a better society than we've ever been, and perhaps take a step back into what we used to have, back in the 70s and 80s and even the 90s, before it was systematically destroyed like it is being now. People will see it. It's just got to get really dark first.
Yeah, absolutely. Carly, it's almost a little bit like, a cornered rat. Just when they know they're about to die, there's that last attack, isn't there? Or in like the monster movies where, you shoot them and they come back for one last attack. It feels as though they are throwing all their eggs at us, everything in the kitchen sink, because they know their time's up. It feels a little bit like that. They're ramping everything up, and it's getting to the point now. It's getting so obvious where it just has to get so dark, right, for us to see it, for the average person to see it, right?
Yeah, I think if anyone's thinking we're not in some kind of spiritual war right now, without going, and it's not a woo-woo thing, is it? I wouldn't mind, but we talk about the script playing out, or scripture, and it is playing out. We've got to fulfill the book, as Bob Marley said. So, whether you kind of believe, I think they know that the earth goes in cycles, and they know when cataclysms come, etc., and so on. They've got this hidden knowledge, they've got this occult knowledge, and again, without going too woo-woo or wacky, what's been hidden from us is that we have dominion of this place. It says that in Scripture, we have dominion. We don't own anything. We have beneficial use of it all, and really, the kingly law is love thy neighbor as thyself. We don't need any other laws, but certainly my mission is to shine light on the fact that certainly law, even common law, common means municipal or to bind, but the self-regulation or the ascension of spirit is us kind of reaching that higher frequency. And when the more the dark come like that, the more that they come for us, the more, like John says, have we got that strength of spirit as a collective, as a human race, or a hue of man of light, to keep shining light on this darkness and transgress it. I believe that we do. I think either maybe it's some kind of timeline split, but I'm not going to go there. But certainly, these rituals that they're doing, going back to wars as well. We've got to stop joining in with the rituals. And this blood cult loves its rituals. Soul dyers, soldiers, and this is just a different war. It's a different style of war. And we're all kind of, we've been in battle, haven't we now for many years with it now. But it's certainly revealing itself. It's like how I've just, I decoded Saint Valentine's Day. That's is it. Lupercalia, that's a Roman festival. Halloween's a Roman satanic festival. Christmas, Xmas, say 10 Downing Street, X, the number of the X, and it goes on and on and on. Easter is Ishtar, which is Sirius, which is Satan, without, again, that's another podcast. But we've got to stop giving our energy to these people. We've still got, it's not like about apathy. We like John does what John does, you do what you do, JC, I do what I do. And if we all do it together and just keep shining light on it, I think we win. In Scripture, we win. Good always defeats evil, and that's that moving of Sirius and our sun. That's that cataclysmic thing. That's the real climate change, and they're hiding that. And I think they're coding to each other, all these elites, these families that have hidden this occult knowledge, and occult just means hidden, from us for centuries, and we're starting to wake up. I don't like that term, but we're starting to see it. For those that have eyes to see, and for those that have ears to hear. And it says, as again in Scripture, at the end of the days, when you see it, go tell others. That's it. That's the key to it, really. And love, I hate to be cheesy, man, but and love thy neighbor as thyself. Like John says, he can't save his brother. My dad got double jabbed. We've all kind of gone, and we've all lost in this, haven't we? But we keep on. I say battle. I don't like fight, but the battle against good and evil that's been raging for, like I say, a very long time. But we
Yeah.
win.
Doing what's right. John, have you noticed anyone's sort of any apologies from family and friends in the last few months, or you just think it might still
Yeah,
take a while?
well, it's interesting because one of the things that has taught me this whole thing is it's easier to fool someone than it is to get them to admit they've been fooled. One of the seven deadly sins we talk about is pride, and I never really saw it because I'm the first one. If I've made a mistake or I've fucked up, I'll go, yeah, all right. But they can't do it. They can't bring themselves to do it. Why can't they bring themselves to do it? I think fear, the frightening to admit what's happening. Different people have different reaction to danger, don't they? And I saw this when I worked on the door for 7 years and some sticky clubs. Some of them would run, others would bury their head in the sand. Some of them, they'll fight, they'll stand and fight. They've all got a different reaction, haven't they? And I think this is what we're seeing as the truth slowly emerges. I think a lot of people, they won't be able to cope with it, and they will go on a rampage, especially if you've lost your mum or your dad, or you've had your kids sterilized, or your lives have been destroyed with myocardia, and these people knew, and it's a deliberate act. So I foresee, unfortunately, there will be civil unrest, and there may be politicians dragged off to lampposts. I would have little sympathy for them. I wouldn't condone it, but I'd have little sympathy for it because I can understand. I've got one son. If I'd lost my son after he'd been poisoned with myocardia, I probably would target those responsible personally. I would urge people to show restraint. I would urge people to remain calm, and let's just focus on bringing these people to justice as the truth emerges. But people have lost everything. They've got nothing to lose, have they? That's the grim reality. And I think these people who facilitated this, they better hope there's a seat in the deep bunker for them out of the way. because I suspect many people will be after them as the truth emerges, is the reality.
They'll probably all just bugger off to Switzerland where they normally go and
Oh
just
yeah,
in
they'll
the
be
mountains,
sitting
grab
under a
off.
mountain, wouldn't they? But it
Yeah.
won't save them. There's no hole deep enough to save these people from what the truth and what is coming.
Yeah.
That's why we've got all these kind of like lost underworld cities. Allegedly, they're all signaling to each other and they go underground, right? Because they know what's coming. So it's kind
Mm.
of like, but hey ho, that's another show. But certainly when you said about pride, John, being one of the seven deadly sins, and I've nothing against gay people. You want to be gay, be gay. It's a beautiful thing. But when we know it's an agenda against our kids and this trans, agenda, if you want to go and chop your bits off and dress up as a woman, I'm all for you, brother. But don't be bringing it onto our children. Don't be bringing it. Don't. It's an agenda. Like that's my key thing. But again, there's the pride flag is this chakra system upside down because crown means corona, which is where we get crown from, corona, and virus means poison. So that violet, it's violet. Is it indigo violet? I never remember which way around it
Mm.
is, but that's the crown. So coronavirus literally meant crown poison to cut us off from source. So they flip the pride flag, so it's red at the top rather than the other way around, and they miss the top colour off. They miss the seven off and they turn it into a six. But it's just another thing of the symbols where they're trying to invert everything. That's that satanic, baphometical, luciferic agenda. And it's again, I always say it when the human race learns the language of symbolism, then a great veil will fall from the minds of men. It's they're telling us all the time. But they're not even. We don't even need to use the symbols anymore, do we now? Like, I mean, is that blatant? And but that's what they want. They want pedophilia and the rest, and they want it in the open. That's how things are now, and everyone goes along with it. That's the new normal, but not on our watch, as I always say.
Mm. I was actually reading something today, and it was talking about the how the jab actually leads to a 14.5% higher likelihood of sexual orientation and gender dysphoria issues. I mean, it's all yeah, it's all interconnected, isn't it? I mean, the jab with the food, nutrition, with the gender bending stuff in the education. I mean, it's all just to kind of weaken and demoralize and get us more dependent on all these institutions that they're controlling. So I mean, it's all starting,
Yeah.
it's all out. It's just in front of you. It's not even hidden. That's the thing. It's hidden in plain sight, this stuff. It's there right in front of you. It's like the guy robbing the shop in a high vis jacket. That is the ultimate kind of, just totally overtly kind of, it's showing you, isn't it? But
With just his fingers in his pocket, John. It's not even a real gun. It's just like, and that's
yeah.
that false evidence appearing real fear, right? It's it's
Yeah.
it's an illusion, like to keep us all in line. I mean, it's happening, I'm not in that sense, but
Mm.
definitely. I mean, Matt Hancock, when it came out that for his WhatsApp messages, and all the WhatsApp
Yeah.
messages, mysteriously seemed to disappear. But when he said deploy the next variant, I mean, deploy is a military term. So, and
Why?
it was out there on
Why did
national
people
TV,
not
and
react to that? Why did people not react to that? And then they quickly brought out the Gary Lineker tweet was more in the news about, that was taking up more of the headlines than Matt Hancock admitting that he's deployed the next, he wants to deploy the next variant as it's all engineered. Why? People didn't even care. They got him on I'm a Celebrity. They built his profile up. They got him loved again in that, and then it all just went away. The people didn't care anymore because he was on I'm a Celebrity. Get me out of here. It's just unbelievable the way they can just engineer public perception of all this sort of stuff just from the box in the corner of the room. Anyway,
yeah. There's that titanium black box again, but don't get me started on
oh, that's
those.
another
That is
one.
a
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But again, like John says about the prisons, they're
Mm,
building everything in black cubes. In Manchester, the new music stadium is a big black cube.
mm,
When they took the Twin Towers down, and the Twin Towers comes from Canaan, from a story, it goes back that long. The Twin Towers. That's why they were called the Twin Towers. And that sacrifice again, that blood sacrifice. What did they put in the place? Two black cubes. And what's in
mm.
the corner of you if everyone's room,
Every
apart from
room.
mine? I don't watch it, but
Mm,
a big black cube, that's your telly. It's that's where that illusion and that nonsense comes from. What, like John
mm.
says, what we all staring at, wandering around at our phones, not even getting in touch with nature. And they want everything synthetic. And again, that this movement that we've got, we want everything going back to what's natural and organic. But again, you're staring
Mm.
into a black scry
Black
in there
Mirror.
again.
Black Mirror. The Netflix. series, Black Mirror, isn't it? And then what, you got the bite of the apple on the back, So it's just like the Wicked Witch, isn't it?
Oh
So
man,
yeah.
yeah. Again, it's all their symbols, but
Mm, there we go. Yeah.
again,
Um, we've done an hour. John, thank you so much for, you're continually going on all these shows, and you're someone that's actually got a bit of a backbone, moral backbone. And I know that, we all we can say is just like we're eternally grateful for people like you to be on the front lines doing this stuff, and having some virtue.
Well, to be honest, I don't really feel like I've done anything special, bar what we should all be doing for each other. If you had a blind man crossing a busy road, what would you do? Would you tap him on the shoulder and, say, let me help you across the road? Or would you get out your camera and start filming it? It's depends what makes you tick, doesn't it? And I just, I don't care about the consequences to me, to be honest with you. I really don't care. I think everyone is more important collectively than just me. So, and if I could rewind to do it all again, I'd do exactly the same.
Yeah, yeah. That's the message that people need. I mean, not that I'm in your shoes, John, but like the way that I live is just like I'm okay if someone kills me as long as I'm doing what's right. If everyone
Yeah.
did that, we'd be in a good place. But
Oh,
unfortunately, people won't
100%.
do
Well,
that.
I draw comfort knowing that at some point, um, we're all going to meet our maker spiritually, and we will
Mm,
be judged on what we've done in this life. I can tell you, I know it. You feel it in the funeral home. I feel it,
mm,
and I can tell you, I'm going to meet my maker with confidence. There are going to be people who are petrified as they breathe their last in their bunker or in their luxury mansion with the blood of thousands and millions on their hands. So I draw comfort from that, I draw comfort from
mm.
that. And when my time comes, I can tell you I'll be running back into the light to get here, to get back at them again.
You come back in. Yeah, a lot of
Yeah,
people
yeah,
want
I
to get
will.
out the
Yeah.
matrix. You want to
Nah,
come straight
I
I'm
want to
back
off.
come. Yeah, I want to get
I
straight
think
back
I've
on
made
them.
a terrible mistake. So,
Yeah.
apparently, was it Anton LaVey of the Satanic Church on his deathbed? The leader of the
Yeah.
Satanic Church allegedly said his last words were, "What have I done?"
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Good.
So,
Good. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I would
So,
meet him with confidence. We're all going to die. It's a journey we're all going to make. It's inevitable. Why are people frightened of dying? I'm more frightened about living poorly.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I'm not
Dying
afraid to
wonder.
die. I've done that already. That's that
Yeah,
famous line. Copy when it ain't afraid to die. I've done that
exactly.
already.
Exactly.
So yeah, I've been here all the
Do I want to suffer in life or be tortured to death? Of course not. I won't
Mm.
pretend. But I'm not going to live the life these people want us to live. I'm not going to be complicit in murder. I'm not going to hide it when I see something terrible, and I don't care about the consequences. Bring it on. Come and get me now. Come and get me. You know where I am. I'm a soft target. Come and get me if you want to shut me up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel
Yeah.
you.
Good stuff. Yeah. Respect. Respect to you both.
All I just want people to do is stop taking these poisons and
Yeah.
don't comply. Perhaps when you go to the ballot box, take a black marker pen with you and write, I do not consent through the whole of the ballot paper. And the
Mm.
reason being is that if you don't vote, you give your consent to whoever is voted in because you've had the opportunity to vote and haven't. If you go and vote and you spoil that paper by writing, I do not consent, those votes are counted. They're counted as spoilt ballot paper. It sends a clear message. Let people in a constituency of 400,000 get in on a few hundred votes. It sends a clear message, doesn't it? And meanwhile, we'll keep telling them there is no one to vote for. Don't think that bringing Labour in is going to make any change. Graham Brady told us that at a meeting in Westminster. It's above his pay grade. There is no democracy. They're just going to carry on the agenda. It's a different side of the same coin.
Yeah. Two asses,
Yeah.
two cheeks of the same ass.
Yeah, of course it is. One that I
Yeah. Yeah.
like to kick.
Yeah.
And
Um,
and democracy literally means mob rule. Why? And again, back to the X. What did they get you to put in the box? An X. That's where you get
Yeah.
Xbox from. The man in the box, the Vitruvian man trapped in matter in the Xbox.
mm,
The XC10, 10. Also, but
yeah.
yeah, don't use the X.
Yeah.
Oh,
Um,
well, thank you so much. I'll say, John. Anyway,
yeah.
thanks. It was brilliant meeting you, and thank you so much for taking time to have a good chat with us because I know how busy you are. But thank you so much.
You take care of yourself, guys, and God
Yeah.
bless us all. Be kind to each other and take care.
Cheers, John.
Bye,
Thanks.
guys.
Thanks, everyone.